In 1943, a man walked into a New York hotel and never came out. He was 76 years old. He was alone. On the nightstand lay a sheet of paper with calculations that no one could decipher. That sheet of paper disappeared before anyone could photograph it. The man was Nikola Tesla, and the last thing he was working on was not an invention. It was a theory about human consciousness and why most human beings lived in a chronically compressed vibrational state. He didn't put it in those terms. But what he had realized was this: frequency isn't built up, it's released, and it's held captive not by what you can't do, but by what you keep doing without realizing it. Edgar Cayce, the most extensively documented psychic of the 20th century, reached the same conclusion from a completely different angle. He said one thing, and he said it in many different ways over the course of 40 years of work. Your natural frequency is already whole. It doesn't need to be attained. It needs to be discovered beneath what you've built on top of it. These are the 5 things you've built on top of it. 5 things you must let go of right now. Not because someone is telling you to, but because as long as you carry them, nothing you add on top of them will hold. The first is the need to control outcomes. And here, you must be careful, because the ego disguises it well. It calls it planning, it calls it responsibility, it calls it prudence. But there is a way to distinguish true planning from obsessive control. Planning ends when you've done your part. Control begins again, right there. Cayce identified this impulse as the frequency of distrust, not distrust of people, distrust of the very structure of reality itself. And that distrust has a precise mechanism. Every obsessive thought about how things will turn out sends a signal. The universe isn't reliable enough to let it run its course. And the universe responds to that signal. Not because it's vindictive, because it works through resonance. Control stems from fear. Fear contracts the energy field. A contracted field attracts situations that confirm it. And those situations justify even more control. It's a cycle. A self-perpetuating cycle that you feel is proof that you're right to hold the reins. That's not the case. Cayce called this active surrender, not resignation, full action, and then total release. Do your part with all the precision and presence you have, then stop holding on to the reins. The energy you release in that letting go is the same energy you were wasting on control. Only now it creates, rather than blocks. The second thing is fear-based thinking. And here, too, the trap is subtle. Because visible fear, the kind you feel before something important, you recognize it, you name it, you deal with it. The problem is invisible fear, the kind that isn't called fear. It's called realism. It's the voice that says, don't overdo it. Don't delude yourself. Always prepare for the worst, so at least you won't be disappointed. That voice sounds wise. It sounds mature. It has all the hallmarks of someone who has learned from life. But in neurobiological terms, that voice is a constant transmitter of survival signals. And a nervous system in survival mode cannot expand. This isn't a metaphor. It's physiology. The deeper problem is that that voice isn't yours. It was instilled in you, by your family, by your culture, by the traumas you've experienced. It took root so early that now it seems like your own view of reality. It isn't. It's a filter. And that filter decides every day what you can see, what you can believe is possible, and what kinds of opportunities you're able to recognize as real. Positive thinking won't fix this. Overlaying positivity on top of fear is like painting over rust. It lasts a few days. Then it crumbles again. The real solution is more uncomfortable, observing the thought without identifying with it. Ask yourself, does this thought expand me or contract me? And consciously choose which frequency you want to operate from. Not just once, every time. Stop for a second, because what comes next is the point where most people freeze up, not because they don't understand, but because it touches something they've long protected. The third thing you must let go of is the past. Don't forget it. Just stop living in it. Cayce said that the soul lives in the eternal present, but the wounded self lives permanently in the past. And every time you return to a painful memory, the betrayal, the failure, whoever hurt you, you're not just remembering, you're replaying it. The body doesn't distinguish between a recalled past event and a present event. It activates the same circuits, releases the same hormones, and transmits the same signal to the field. Put simply, you're radiating today the frequency of something that ended years ago. And that frequency attracts situations that are vibrationally compatible. It's not bad luck, it's coherence. Reality is consistent with the signal you're transmitting, and you're still transmitting the echo of something you thought you'd let go of. This is the hardest part. Staying in the past often feels like loyalty. It feels like being honest with what you've experienced. It feels like refusing to downplay something that was real and painful. But Cayce was clear. Letting go of the past doesn't mean it didn't matter. It means you matter more. The present moment is too precious to spend it in a place that no longer exists. The fourth thing is the need for external approval. And this is the most costly of all, because it operates silently, 24 hours a day, in almost every decision you make. Think about the last important choice you made, not the one you told others about, the real one, deep down. And ask yourself, did you make it because it felt right, or because someone around you would have approved? If you hesitated even for a second, the answer is already there. Cayce said that the soul arrives in this life with its own direction, a specific frequency, a precise task. And that direction wasn't meant to be put to a vote. The soul doesn't need consensus, but most people have replaced their inner compass with the gaze of others. Every time you make that substitution, your connection to your authentic frequency weakens a little more. You feel the cost in your body, that strange fatigue that sets in after saying yes when you wanted to say no. That dull tension that precedes conversations where you have to be the version of yourself that others expect. That quiet voice that, at night, asks you the question you don't want to hear, but what do I really want? Cayce said that love that must be earned is not love. It's a transaction. And transactions always leave a bill to pay. The approval you seek outside yourself will never fill the void, because that void isn't about approval. It's about connection with yourself. And you can't delegate that connection. The fifth thing is the most uncomfortable of all. And it's the one that the spiritual world, exactly the world you're turning to for growth, guards most tenaciously. You must let go of spiritual performance. Cayce identified it as the most sophisticated defense mechanism the ego has ever constructed. Spiritual performance gives you the full sensation of growth without any of the real costs. You have the language, you have the practices, you have the identity. You talk about frequency, consciousness, and awakening. You identify as someone who is working on themselves. And that very identification has become the wall, not the door. Because the ego has learned to use spirituality as the ultimate mask, the one hardest to remove because it seems the most genuine. Who would dare to question the path of someone who meditates, who studies, who dedicates themselves to growth? No one, and the ego knows it. Cayce observed that the people most deeply identified with being spiritual were often the most disconnected from their authentic frequency, because they had invested so much in the image of being evolved that they couldn't afford to be honest about where they really were. They couldn't look at the relationship that was draining them, the pattern that kept repeating itself, the fear they hadn't yet named. Ask yourself this: are you using a spiritual concept to avoid an uncomfortable truth about your life? Is there something concrete, specific, practical, a situation, a person, a choice that you're ignoring while you talk about vibration. The soul isn't fooled by performance. It transmits the frequency of where you truly are, not where you're telling yourself you are. True humility, the kind Cayce considered the foundation of any authentic growth, is the willingness to say, I'm not there yet. I'm still hurting over this. I'm still afraid of that. And from this honest place, and only from this place, can I truly begin. The soul doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't wait for you to have it all figured out. It just waits for you to stop hiding. The weight you're carrying isn't yours. It never was. It's made up of control, masquerading as caution, fear instilled by others, a past held onto out of loyalty. The gazes of others turned into a compass, spiritual masks built to make you look like you've already arrived. Letting go isn't a loss. It's the most precise and courageous act you can perform. Because beneath everything you've accumulated, your frequency is already whole. It doesn't need to be created. It needs to be discovered. If this has struck a chord within you, share it with anyone who feels that something isn't quite right. Leave a comment. Which of the 5 do you relate to the most?